Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on AWS Transform for .NET. And this is the first agentic AI experience for modernizing your .NET Framework applications to cross-platform .NET. My name is Nitsh Jagannathan, and I'm a product lead for AWS Transform for .NET. Joining me are Arthur and Runeet. Okay, let's get started. Today, we'll be talking about why customers want to modernize their .NET applications from legacy .NET Framework into cross-platform. And we will also introduce AWS Transform for .NET, and we'll show you a demo of how it works. And we'll also share some customer highlights and like partners who have come along the journey. Let's start with the motivation for why customers want to modernize their .NET applications from Windows to Linux. So customers who have legacy applications, a large portfolio of legacy applications written in like .NET Framework, these are over a decade old, and they have fallen out of support, and they have compliance issues, security issues that they need to go address them. So they need to go upgrade them to the latest version of .NET. And just by my moving from .NET Framework into .NET 8, that allows the applications to run across, other operating systems and also even like other computer architecture, like for instance, like Graviton instances. So just by moving out of, like essentially the framework into .NET 8, you will be able to save an hour licensing cost of up to 40% because now you can run them on Linux, right? And by moving to like instances such as like ARM and Graviton, you could save even more. And by moving to the latest .NET 8, you will be able to say improve the performance of the same legacy applications by up to 2x. And once they're running on Linux, you will also open up opportunities to scale your application more by taking advantage of the containers or cloud native solutions such as like, serverless architectures or even running them on different instance types. So your scalability is options, rapidly, are more for you. And what we have seen is customers who have AWS customers who are currently having Windows workloads, they're already choosing, to adopt Linux environments, and over 70% of them done so. Okay, so that sounds great. So what's the challenge, right? Porting from .NET Framework to .NET 8 or cross-platform .NET is not exactly an easy process, right? Like even though this picture shows that it's a loop, think of each one of these steps as a loop. Like for instance, you have to analyze the code, you identify incompatibilities, and then you port the code. And as you're familiar with any of, like any of these porting actions, you make one small change, and there are like 500 build errors. And then you have to go back and identify what was the responsible party and go fix that. Those packages may be deprecated. You may not, we may not find folks who are familiar with that code pathway. And then after that, you have to validate, and then finally you have to deploy them. So this is a very long process from based on what we have seen from customer workloads. Like, sometimes these for large portfolios, it could take like years to modernize their applications. And it's extremely labor intensive. So you have to dedicate developer teams time for this entire duration, and it is error prone. Those packages, the knowledge base may not be with the company anymore. They have migrated, to move to different teams. So it's, like new teams have to spin up, and then there are collaboration bottlenecks all over the place. So this is exactly where the problem statement where customers are not able to manually do this for a large portfolio of applications. This is where AWS Transform for .NET comes in. What we have done is we have developed a foundational LLM that is trained specifically on .NET Framework to .NET 8 transformation. We are using over, we trained it over like open source projects that have been there, along with years of experience helping customers modernize their workloads. And it is available as a unified web experience for transforming applications at hundreds of, like at scale. Whether you have 100 applications, 1,000 applications, you can point to a repo. We'll be able to take that in, do the transformation, and commit those code back into these repositories. And for specific applications that that a developer needs to port, they can use the Visual Studio IDE experience as well. And another thing that we have taken care is that it is part of your organization. AWS Transform becomes like a domain expert within your teams. So you can review all the changes it is making. You can actually like hand off tasks from one person to the other within your teams, so that you have a chain of custody as well as supervision of this whole transformation process. So the benefits for this, where using AWS Transform, is definitely the acceleration that you would see, right? Like we are bringing in, we are offloading the tedious tasks of porting .NET framework applications through automation, through generative AI, and based on our analysis, you can accelerate up to 4x for porting of these applications. And by making them cross-platform, you can reduce operational cost of up to 40%. And you can port hundreds of applications at scale by pointing to us to a repo, and then we'll be able to take it from there. And essentially, just by running them on .NET, the latest versions of .NET, you are boosting the security as well as the performance of your applications. Before we go into like the demo of how it works, I also want to share some key success stories that came along our way. Thomson Reuters was one of our launch customers. They have already transformed 1.5 million lines of code. They've seen 70% reduction in their technical debt, and they're continuing to transform their legacy applications with us. And we are able to work very closely with this customer and modernize their legacy portfolio of applications. And similarly, we have a similar engagement with Hartford as well. And you would see some more, we are partnering with launch partners as well as who have brought their customer workloads through AWS Transform, and they're working through modernizing customers' portfolio of applications as well. So we want to go now into how this whole solution works. I will set the context for at a high level for what are the stages that AWS Transform goes through. And then at the end of it, you will see a demo and then little bit under the covers of exactly how it operates. AWS Transform for .NET is available in two experiences. One is a large-scale web experience, which is operating, it's a headless experience that operates within the console. You point to a repository. We'll start from there. We'll transform all the supported project types that we can identify from there and transform, and we will commit those code back into the repo. For specific applications which developer wants to get involved and transform, this is a scalpel tool which you can use from within Visual Studio IDE, and they can do the transformation as well. And so it goes through three broad stages. One is the analysis. We identify whether it is a repository or whether it's a solution from within Visual Studio. We do the analysis to identify dependencies, any missing dependencies, projects that we have to order. And then after we do the analysis, we get feedback from customers, and they provide direction on what we want to transform. We use that information. We transform these applications from .NET Framework to .NET 8. And if there are unit test projects, we'll port them to the .NET 8 version as well. And then we will run those unit test projects, and we'll provide you a transformation summary and logs, which has details of all the actions that AWS Transform took. Let's dive into each of those three stages just a little bit more in detail. So when I said supported project types, today AWS Transform handles WCF projects, Web API, MVC or single page applications, the business logic layers of it, class library, and console apps. So these are the supported project types. In addition, we are also supporting UI framework project, UI MVC Razor views, and we are able to port them into ASP.NET Core Razor views as well. So on the web experience, one of the key things that we are able to do is, because now we are able to look across your entire portfolio, we are able to identify dependencies of projects across these repos, and we order them in the right strategic order so that we can transform them. What that means is, let's say there is a project A which is in repo, which is in a separate repo, let's say A. And then there is a separate repo B, which has a different project. But this project in repo B depends on project A, project in repo A. We want to make sure that the repo A project gets transformed first so that we can refer them right way with the transformed project in the, the repo B. So this ordering and transformation, like a dependency analysis is very crucial to ensure that at scale we are able to like map out these dependencies, and if there are any private packages that are that you are using, that we are able to point that out so that we can resolve those dependency issues prior to the transformation. Because once these analysis is done and we highlight those gaps and customers are able to resolve them, then the rest of the transformation proceeds smoothly, right? And we have also like integrated with partners such as Cast, who can do the assessments and they can able to break the customer application into waves, and we are able to ingest those waves and do the transformation based on those exported values. And I'll share a little bit more detail about that. The transformation itself, we are porting today. The target we are supporting is .NET, essentially like .NET 3.6 plus into .NET 8. So even if you have .NET 6, you can transform them to .NET 8. If you have .NET 4 or Framework 4, we will support them as a .NET 8 target as well. And you can transform hundreds of applications. And if we have private NuGets, you will have the opportunity to upload those to AWS Transform. We'll use that information to identify those dependencies and whether we need to keep them as framework, and whether if there are corresponding core packages available, we will be able to take those decisions seamlessly. And we are able to port UI framework Razor views as well. And you can see the progress visibility of all of them in a dashboard. You can constantly, you don't have to track it all the time. You come in, you can look at a holistic view, and then you'll get notified by email when the job is done. So you don't have to constantly be in front of a computer. And finally, like for applications that you want to go, look at it after we do the transformation, you can continue this work in IDE, and you can go, use the IDE for continuing the transformation. One of the things that customers have asked when we are working with them is, you're using generative AI, great. How do we know that the quality of transformation that you're doing can be trusted? So one of the things that we have done was we were porting the unit test projects from .NET Framework to .NET 8, but now what we are doing in GA is we are executing those unit test projects as well. Because we are executing those unit test projects, customers will have a mechanism to compare before transformation versus after transformation and understand what the logic was changed, whether it is trustworthy based on that. And we are also providing a transformation summary, which is a natural language summary of all the repos and the projects, the files that we modified, the APIs that we changed. And like if there are build issues, we are able to provide those build issue summaries as well. And we on the IDE, we are able to provide a Linux readiness report for each of the solutions that we transform. So you can identify what are all the missing gaps in your application that you need to go to completely run this as Linux. Some of these applications can directly run as Linux, but if you're, for example, using any Windows dependent system calls or system commands, then you will not be able to directly translate to Linux. So you'll have to find the corresponding replacements before you can run them on Linux. Okay. And as I mentioned, our experience is available in two flavors. One is at scale as a web console, and then there is the other one, which is a Visual Studio IDE. And you will see demos of both of them today in this webinar. And for doing that demo and taking it further, I give it to Runeet, who's going to take over and show the demo here.
Awesome. Thanks, Nits. So Nits mentioned about typical stages or during the transformation journey, there are different phases that your application code will be taken through. As a developer, if you look at this, it will look very familiar to a typical developer refactoring loop. Meaning, as a developer, you will start with first analyzing your code, understanding that, hey, this is the .NET framework application I have. Where should I start from? And what are the parts of the code, the APIs or NuGet package dependencies should I tackle first? Then you will go ahead, make those code changes. You will maybe compile your application again, and maybe you'll run into some compile time exceptions. So you will go ahead and debug and resolve those issues. So what AWS Transformation is trying to do is essentially offload this manual work at scale, starting with first analyzing multiple repositories which are in your source control system. So as Nitz mentioned, it's going to look at all the dependencies across the repositories and also multiple projects within a same solution in one repository. And internally, what it's going to do is think of it like a dependency graph that will be created, where it will start from the leaf nodes and start working upwards, and try to maybe port or transform those projects first, and then those solutions, and then if there is a cross repository dependency, then go across those repositories. And while walking through this dependency graph, what we do internally is uh, we are using both our rule-based porting, which is based on the knowledge base that we have created over the period of multiple years, as well as generative AI-based prompt engineering to find out what kind of errors your code is running into, and then going ahead and making those code transformations within the realm of your goal, which is to go from .NET Framework to .NET 8 without trying to modify business logic. And once we get to a point where the code is good to be verified, that's where the verification stage would come, and those unit tests which are there in your in your application code, those will be executed and results would be produced. Now, all of this happens on a branch of its own. We don't make changes in place. So within the repository that is being transformed by AWS Transform, we are going to create a branch of its own. And in the end, after doing all of this transformation slash modernization loop, we're going to bring up those updated code blocks for the developer in loop to review and accept those changes, or if they want to take additional action, maybe modify it further, they should be able to do that as well. Now, having said all of that, how would you get started with AWS Transform? Now, a couple of things. First is because I'm talking about the web experience, and my friend here, Arthur, he's going to show you the IDE experience. To get started with the web experience, you should be able to launch AWS Transform from within AWS console. The very first time when you will do it, it will essentially, if you're not connected to Northern Virginia or Frankfurt region, these are the two regions that we currently support from the service. You can pick one of those regions. Now, keep in mind, these are the regions where an ephemeral managed environment will be created. This is an isolated environment that will be created to run those multiple stages or multiple steps that I talked about. Your application need not to be running in these regions. In fact, your code need not to be in AWS to begin with. And once your transformation is done, you can decide to deploy and execute your code in a region of your choice. Now, the very first time when you will try to run AWS Transform, you will have to make sure that it is enabled. So you will see a message like this. One of the dependencies for AWS Transform is that you should have Identity Center enabled for your account. If you are doing it in an isolated account where Identity Center is not enabled, you can enable it from within the AWS Transform as well. So we want to make the developer experience a little smooth, which means you can either hook this account to an identity provider, or you can create a local identity center with its own local users. Pretty straightforward. All of this can be done from within AWS Transform. Another flexibility that we provide to our developers and customers is you can choose what kind of encryption should be used while working with your data. You can choose the default AWS managed key, or you can bring your own AWS KMS key and use that for the encryption settings. Once all of this is set up, you are now ready to work with AWS Transform. You will see a screen like this, which will give you two start URLs. The one which is highlighted is the one you will use within IDE. The one I want to show you is the web experience one. So you can copy this URL, put it into your browser window, and you will start with one of the workspaces in which you will start working. Now think of workspace as a container. It's a collection of transformation jobs that you will create. It is going to have artifacts which are used by those jobs, and also connectors. These connectors are the ones which will help you connect these transformation jobs to your source control repos. And of course, as a developer, you don't have to work alone. While you're working for modernization at scale, you can invite another users to collaborate with you and work on those multiple repositories. Now, what we have done is we have recorded this demo that I'm going to roll here. I'm going to take a pause while rolling this demo and walk you through all the steps. Now, the way you will start is you will click on create a job in AWS Transform to kick off AWS transformation job creation. It's going to ask you some questions like, what kind of job are you creating? We support modernization both of .NET and other applications such as VMware and mainframe. So it's going to ask you which kind of modernization do you want to kick off. Then I'm interested in .NET, so it's asking you some information about what the transformation job is going to be called and just to verify what the objective is. Once I verify that and then click on create job, it's going to kick off. It's essentially going to take me down the workflow where I can now start pointing my transformation job to my code repositories. The way transformation job is going to go out and connect to my source control system such as GitHub, etc., is by using connectors for a service called AWS Code Connection. Code Connection, think of it like it is an authenticated connector and application which makes sure that from my AWS environment, I can go out and connect to these external source code systems. In this case, what I'm doing is I'm dropping in an ARN of my existing code connection, giving it a name, and then I'm initiating my connection creation. Now, just because I want to create a connection does not mean I should be given permissions to connect to the source code repo, which means after putting in the connector information, I will generate a verification link which has to be sent to the administrator who can approve this link and allows the transformation job to be able to use the source code in those repos. Now, with that, once my connection is approved, as you can see in this case, connection is approved, I can see a little more details about the connection. Well, with this connection approved, I'm going to click on finalize connector at the top right corner. And after that, my transformation job will start discovering all the repositories which can be reached. Let's see how that is. So here you can see that the connection to source control is established. And by the way, on the right hand side, in the right hand pane, there are different tabs here. The dashboard tab is the one I was working in earlier, and work log is the one which shows me the progress of the actions being performed. And here you can see in the work log, my transformation job has discovered multiple repositories, and it's trying to assess all of those repositories and trying to find candidate repositories which it can potentially transform, right? So meaning if you have non.NET repositories, they may still be discovered, but you may not see them showing up in the list if they are not the potential candidate. With that being selected, in the next step, what I need to do is I have to decide how am I going to do the modernization or transformation for my repositories. By default, AWS Transform is going to create its own transformation plan based on the information I have provided. It is trying to create a transformation plan, which is it's going to create a target branch with its name, target version, and some more information. But all of this can be modified. I can give potential target branch my own name, and also if my application let me just quickly roll it back. If my application is a .NET framework application, but it also includes maybe some .NET standard projects, and if I don't want to transform those standard projects, just want to focus on .NET framework projects, I can check that box and say exclude .NET standard projects. Somebody asked a question that do we support transforming from ASP.NET MVC? So the answer is yes. What you see here is um, a box which, if you check that, and if there is an MVC application discovered in your source code repository, AWS Transform will try to transform from ASP.NET pages to ASP.NET Core Razor pages. And this is a relatively new feature. We did not have it in preview, so we are excited to share with you that now you can do this uh, with your applications as well. If you're happy with this information and the default repositories that it has picked, you can click on Confirm Repositories and kick off the transformation job. But if you want to customize your transformation plan and you don't want to pick repositories picked by AWS Transform, you can go ahead and pick repositories which make sense for you. Maybe you want to start with a couple of them. Now, one thing to notice here is, as Nitz was explaining, when we do this assessment of discovering these repositories, discovering the kind of applications are in there, we are also trying to find out dependency across repositories. So as soon as I clicked on this repository called Fuji, because AWS Transform knew that there is a dependency on this repository, it flagged that information. Uh, Now, in addition to flagging this information here, if you're interested in exporting this whole transformation summary and take a look at it, we provide this summary in JSON format as well. So information such as what are the repositories, how many lines of code, number of projects, and if it depended on any other repository, all of that information would be there. One more interesting thing which I will show you in just a second is when AWS Transform is transforming your .NET code to .NET 8, it will try to um, essentially understand what NuGet packages are going to be replaced with what are the NuGet packages in .NET 8. But if you have private NuGet packages, there is no way for AWS Transform to modify the code, and you can potentially run into build errors. So to eliminate that issue, what we try to do is we also try to figure out in the assessment stage if the application depends on any private NuGet packages. And if application does, which is present in this assessment summary, what we do in the next step is ask or basically flag the fact that there are missing package dependencies in there. Which means as a developer now you can either provide these missing dependencies by running a PowerShell script from a machine which can connect to the private NuGet repositories and package those dependencies together and bring it to you, so you can run this script and create those dependency packages. Or if you know about those dependencies already, if you have a NuGet package, both the framework version and .NET 8 version, you can upload that both the versions and let AWS Transform take a look at it and decide how it should be used. Now, once you're good with this information, you can say proceed with the next step. In the next step, it is giving you summary of like how many repos are going to be transformed. Out of those, how many were dependent repos? If there were private NuGet packages, what was the number of that? And total number of lines of code. With all of that information in there, of course, you can expand, look at the repository selected and more information. But once you're ready, once you're happy with this information, you want to click on approve and start transformation. Now, this is where the transformation is going to kick off. It's going to take some time based on how many projects you have in your solution, how many repositories are you transforming, and then what is the total number of lines that you have in each solution, in each project. The complexity and dependency on third-party libraries, on base class libraries, on your private NuGet packages. So based on all of that, eventually once the transformation completes, you will see a transformation summary with a dashboard somewhat similar to this. Here you can see it's showing a couple of different graphs here, starting with number of repositories that were transformed, successful, not successful. Similarly, number of projects in those repositories and the unit test. We will try to transform those unit tests and then execute wherever it makes sense. And you can see details of number of unit tests that were executed, how many passed, how many did not pass. Similarly, you can look at the repository information by clicking on repository. In this case, this was 4 projects. A couple of them were test projects. So you can see all of those details, lines of code, number of files that have transformed. Additionally, if you want to export this into a report, we support JSON file export of these reports, but you will notice here at the bottom, it's just not a JSON which is random in nature. we actually try to create human readable transformation summary, where everything that has happened in the transformation, we try to just write it out like a summary along with all the data points which can be consumed. This is really useful when you're doing transformation at scale and you have to look at the summary of transformations, multiple of them at the same time. But this is not it. Imagine you kicked off a transformation job and then you got off to working on things that you had to work on, and the job took some time. You don't have to be in front of your screen all the time because this is asynchronous process. We will continue to do transformation irrespective of you're connected to your browser or not. Once a transformation is done, you will get a transformation summary email coming out to you directly with some data points about uh, how many repositories were transformed, projects transformed, etc. The one of the cool things with this email is you will see a deep link going to those repositories, and this is a deep link going to the transformed branch. Remember, I told you that when the transformation job works, we don't make changes in place. We create a branch and we work on that branch and commit all the transform changes in that branch. Let's see how the branch is going to look like once you click on these deep links. In this case, my repository was in GitHub, and you can see at the top left corner it says transform and with alphanumeric code. So you have a couple of options from here. One is you can use the compare feature to compare the code changes between this branch and the source branch from where you kicked off transformation. And after looking at the diff, if it makes sense, you can go ahead and create a pull request and start working in the source branch. Alternatively, if as I mentioned, that this requires further investigation and maybe local debugging at the developer machine, what you can potentially do is rather than merging ahead, you can clone this repository on your dev machine and start working with this repository locally and verify it, test it, and if everything looks good, commit your changes and then merge with the source branch. I know I went relatively fast. To sum it up, we looked at how you will get started with AWS Transform. You will launch AWS Transform from within AWS console. There are some prerequisites like Identity Center, choosing the way you want to encrypt your data. And once that is done, you will get a web experience URL. By using that URL, you will start your transformation by creating a transformation job in a workspace. And for that transformation job to reach out to your source code, you will use code connections. You will create a connector which will have permissions to go out to your source code repository. Then the transformation job will start discovering all the code which is in those in your source control system. It will try to come up with a transformation plan based on what it sees. You can override that transformation plan by selecting your own custom plan, selecting your own repositories and also potential branches. We will try to tell you whenever we find that one source code repository has dependency on another source code repository in the same source control system. So we will let you know. And we want to make sure that when we are transforming, we are not doing it in isolation. So with this dependency information, along with the dependent repository, we will also try to find out if there are any private NuGet packages in there and give developers an opportunity to provide more information about those private NuGet packages. With all of that information provided, it will go out and start the transformation job where it will go through the whole transformation loop. And in the end, it will come back with the summary of number of repositories, number of projects which were transformed, and also the unit tests if they were there in those in your repositories, how many of those unit tests were executed, whether they succeeded or not. All of this is happening in a separate branch from the source branch, so that as a developer you can go in, you can compare the changes that have been made. As a developer in loop, you have a full liberty to either accept or not accept those changes. You can clone the code and modify those changes and then accept if it makes sense. Now that was web experience. Let me just quickly stop here and hand it over to Arthur and show you how the same thing is going to work within IDE. Over to you, Arthur.
Thank you, Runit. Let me show you the IDE experience. So I have in front of you Visual Studio 2022, and then I have a solution, as you can see, which has a few projects in it. My Amazon Q developer extension, and also let me connect to my AWS Transform connections as well. It's already signed in, so the way I can see it, I can go to extensions and then get started in the AWS toolkit. And then you see that I'm already connected with Amazon Q Developer or AWS Transform. So in that specific scenario, I wanted to transform this entire solution. So for this to happen, I go to the solution, right click on it, and then I see an option that says port solution with AWS Transform. I will select this option, and then I get prompt with the .NET target I wanted to migrate to, and then some default settings that I might be able to select, like transforming my MVC Razor views, or in this case, I will exclude my .NET standard of migration. I will keep them, check my source in .NET compatible packages versions. So all those options can be selected, unselected. I will then start my migration. So when I start the migration, the first thing that it does, it builds the solution. Your solution has to be able to be built. Otherwise, we won't be able to do the migration for you. So extension build my solution, see it built successfully. We went to the next step, which is gonna take the code that I'm intending to migrate, send to the service, and the service will create a plan for the migration. If I go to my output and select Amazon Q language client, I can see all the interactions that happens behind the scenes in that specific debug mode. As you can see, it was already built. It's zipping the files, sent to the service, which you create a plan. I won't wait this plan to happen, so I will move ahead. I have 3 instances of Visual Studio running. I'll go to one that has already successfully migrated, and then you can see the plan on your left-hand side in my AWS Transformation Hub. It builds the solution, gets the transformation job, and then start migrating every dependency that your project has. And then it has to do with your code groups. So when I selected the solution, he understood that I have 2 code groups, and the code groups are based on the dependencies. So my bookstore.web has 4 dependencies, and for this reason, he brought all the dependencies to be migrated with it. So he understands the sequence that needs to be done. Once he gets migrated, you receive all the notifications. You can see transformation is in progress. That's something that's already happened. And then when you finished, you can see transformation is completed. So it's now available for you. So you don't have to wait the transformation looking at your VS Code. That will be too tedious for you to just watch something that it's going to be completed eventually. You can close your VS Code, come back later, and then when you open up the same project, it takes you to the stage that the project was already migrated. So let's say it was already successfully migrated, you can just come and see the results of the migration. I will now check my code transformation summary. In my code transformation summary, I can go back to my code group and see how many files were changed. Let me just expand this one. How many files were changed, how many packages were updated, APIs, all that information, it's already provided to you. But if I wanted to see more, so details of what was done, I can download a summary as a markdown file. I can click in that option, select folder, it saves that information in this root folder. I already have it here. And this is the summary that was given to me. I really like this option. So this is something new in GA. So you can see a very detailed summary of the project structure, the applications changes that was happened, dependencies, all the projects, the dependencies that were migrated, NuGet packages updated, and then you continue scroll down, you see every project that was migrated and details of them, including errors in case you have any errors in that specific project. It's a very detailed information that helps you to move along when you have to do any manual changes in your solution or project. All right. I also have an option to download the Linux Readiness report. That report gives you information about potential packages that you have to upgrade so you can have your solution running in Linux. Not every package has the same version that can be executed in Linux, so that information gives the detailed information of the package that needs to be upgraded. All right, so we have successfully ported, but the solution is not yet applied to the changes are not yet applied to the solution. I go to the view diffs, and I can see all the files that were changed, maybe added to my solution, renamed. We don't delete files, we rename those files. I can just navigate through them. And then if I wanted to check something, I can just go like a control extensions, for instance, show changes. And that's something similar that Runit showed you on the web interface. I can see the changes. Just pick one file that doesn't have that much of change, but I can see the changes that has happened in my solution and project. Once I'm happy, say, okay, it makes sense to me, I can select them all and can apply changes. From this moment, I'm changing all the files with the files that AWS Transform sent to me. And there we are. I have all the solution, can see the changes right here. So all I need to do now is to see if the application builds. So I have the last one, which I did a complete transformation. I haven't changed one file, and then I build the solution, and then it successfully built. One caveat though, it's not because this solution builds necessarily says that's gonna work for you. You might have to still do some changes manually, but it takes you up to like 90-80% of the work that you need to get done to migrate an application. A migration is a journey, so this is one step in your journey that we expect to accelerate your migration for you. So having this solution build to me is successful. So now I hand back to Nitz to continue on the benefits of using AWS Transform for .NET. Nitz, over to you.
Thank you, Arthur. Let me share the screen quickly. All right. So as part of the, thanks a lot, Arthur, as well as Ranit, for walking us through how this works and also demoing in detail how the customers can get started and use the service. Appreciate it. So these are as part of our, we announced this service in public preview at reInvent December 2024, and then we went general availability on 5/15. So over this period, we worked with a lot of partners and customers along this way, and we shared one of the customer feedback, customer use cases up front. And we have, more of these partners. So if you have worked with these partners, like they're already familiar with this service, and they have transformed, all of these partners have transformed customer workloads on AWS Transform, and they have some experience already. So, you can engage them or you can work with us for future transformation needs. And that recaps our presentation. But I do want to call out a couple of questions that were raised during this in the Q&A. And the first thing I want to point out is that this service is available at no additional cost to you. So you don't have to have a Q Developer Pro subscription to use the service. AWS Transform service, you can set it up independently, and you will be able to use this capability. So you don't need you don't need the queue developer. And because it is free, you're all you need is an AWS account and identity center for you to get started and get transformed the code. Then the second one is like, are we using any of customers' code for training our LLMs? And we have a security and privacy FAQ in our product page. You can go find more information. But the short answer is that we are not using any of customers' information or core source code to train our models. These are all pre-trained models and pre-calibrated, for transforming your applications, and we are not essentially using any customer code. And then there were a lot of questions around, capabilities, around region availability. So we have a robust roadmap around like making it available across multiple regions. And, as you will see more of our, scale evolves, you will see this being available in other regions as well. And yeah, the main thing, one other thing on the UI frameworks, web forms is next on our list of things. It's in our roadmap. So we only support today MVC Razor views to ASP.NET Core Razor views, but we want to support web forms and Win forms and other capabilities in our future roadmap. So yeah, it was very engaging to look into all of those questions. Hopefully, we got most of them. If not, there will be an email address for you to reach out to us, and we can happy to respond to all of those questions and engage with you further. Yeah, so thanks a lot, everyone. And
Yeah, thanks everyone. There have been a lot of questions that we try to answer. Sorry, we couldn't get to all the questions, but if you want to send us a note on that email address on the page, that will be great. So Nits, there is one question. What are the versions of .NET which are supported? I think this is a question which has come up multiple times for
right.
transformation.
So for .NET transformation, the earliest version that we support is 3.6, .NET Framework 3.6, and we .NET 3, all the way to 4 point something framework we support. But if you have applications that are in .NET Core 6, you can convert them to .NET 8 as well. So even if it is already on .NET 6 plus, you can still target to 8. But if you have frameworks 3.6 onwards, we'll be able to support that.
Cool.
Yeah. So the other thing that came up is the VB.NET to C# or Java. Like those capabilities are in our roadmap. Today we do not support VB or C or C++, and those are roadmap capabilities. Okay.
All right. I think we've got to most of the questions. Again, sorry if your question has still not been answered. Drop us a note. Happy to understand your use case a little bit more, and there could be some other solution that we can potentially give you. Our goal is to make sure that you walk away with something useful from here. So, with that, I think we are good to close this session. Thank you so much for joining, everyone.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Appreciate your time and also your insightful questions. Appreciate it. Have a good day.